Coming up today on Uncommon Sense, join me as I interview Ben Hatke, an author-illustrator who has illustrated G.K. Chesterton. Stay tuned. Welcome to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. I'm Grettelyn Darkey, your host, and I am so happy to be joined today by Ben Hatke. How are you today, Ben?
Hi, I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day here outside my studio. So
yeah.
The only challenge here is staying inside and not bolting out of my chair and running out into the green hills.
I get it. I am unfortunate enough to have a construction zone behind my house right now, which keeps us inside, but it is beautiful here too. Thank God. Anyway, well, it's great to have you here. It's a lot of fun. But for those of our listeners and viewers who wouldn't know who you are, would you mind just giving a fuller representation of yourself?
Oh, okay. So I am probably best known in the wide world as a graphic novelist. I illustrate books, I write books, I straddle prose and fiction and adult and children's literature, and other types of things. I have a lively Patreon where the idea of it is it's my less conventional projects. I have, like 3D printed arrowhead type experiments. But mostly I'm known for graphic novel series like Zeta the Space Girl and picture book series like Julia's House for Lost Creatures. Nobody Likes a Goblin. Yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Oh, I love it. Now you did tell me that you actually provided the inspiration for the Chesterton ornament, which might be how most of our people actually would connect with you. I think I have one. Very
possibly. I go way back with Gilbert magazine, way back in the long ago days. I was good friends with Ted Schlinderfritz, who I know does a lot of the covers. We started an Illustrators Guild together, which was going for a while. It was mostly an online thing. And I would frequently do, for a couple years there, I would frequently do illustrations for, is it still called Gilbert magazine? It was at the time.
Okay. Yes, it is.
And then if you really want to plumb the depths, you can look up, I did a short series of Father Brown comics. So translating a few of those into a couple page comics, which were a little bit like serialized for a while. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, I love that. That's fun to dig out of the archives.
Yeah.
Great. Well, how did you first encounter Chesterton, and where did that connection first start?
That's a good question. My earliest memory of G.K. Chesterton as a name attached to a piece of writing was his poem "The Last Hero," which I used to be able to recite. "The wind blew out from Bergen from the dawning to the day. They ride and run with 50 spears to break and bar my way. I will not die alone, but kin to all the powers. Merry as the ancient sun and fighting like the flowers. How bright their steel, how white their eyes. I love each laughing knave. Cry high and bid him welcome to the banquet of the brave." I'm just going to do a couple bits more. "Yes, I shall bless them as they bend and love them where they lie. As on their skulls the sword I swing falls shattering from the sky. The hour when death is like a light and blood is like a rose. You never loved your friends, my friend, as I shall love my foes." Okay, I can still do it.
I love it. I love it.
And I'm cheating a bit because a friend of mine, in high school, my family and I were part of the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is a sort of medieval society. They one of their taglines is "the Middle Ages as they should have been." So it's all the good bits of the Middle Ages without the plague and the,
yeah, we don't need that.
burning witches or whatever.
Yeah.
This is in Indiana. We were in the barony of Rivenstar, and the baron of our barony, Wolf, was also a singer-songwriter. in the genre of filk, which is fantasy and science fiction folk, right?
Okay.
And he had put that poem, The Last Hero, to music and sang it as a sort of like ballad about basically dying with laughter on your lips and a sword in your hand, right?
I love that.
Going down with joy. And that was my first time I think that I crossed paths with Chesterton, and I carried the love of that into college when in one of our very early freshman classes we were given the Everlasting Man to read. So that was I think that was my first, that and The Man Who Was Thursday were my first books, full read books. One was a class assignment book, and the other I found on the bottom shelf of the library in the basement, and I'd never checked it out. The Man Who Was with Thursday, I never checked out the library. I just would go down there and pull it off the shelf, read a little bit of it during school, put it back on the shelf, and continue on. I think if I had checked it out, I would be reading it.
Yeah.
I would be sacrificing study time. But The Everlasting Man was an important one because a quote from the very beginning of that book lodged itself in my brain. And that is where he says, there are two ways of getting home, and one of them is to stay there.
Yes.
The other was to go down around the whole world till we come to the same place.
Yep.
And that, and we can circle around back to that, but that stuck in my brain for a long time and became a big part of my thought and what I did. So that was the beginning for me. And then as a starting out illustrator, when I was doing a lot of like freelance illustration and this and that, just starting out on the internet mostly, I got involved with the Chesterton Society and did some made some friends and did some illustrations, and felt like I was like participating in magazine work, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I think the Man Who Was Thursday, I mean, a lot of Chesterton's work, but The Man Who Was Thursday in particular has such an artist's feel to it.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many colorful descriptions and just beautiful moments that are so vivid, and I don't know.
It's a trippy dream. It really is. It's an odd one. Yes. And somebody like me with such a strong comics background, I should also say, it's a little bit shocking that I didn't read Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, because there's one of the characters in that is Gilbert.
Yeah.
Gilbert is a character in there, and then I was aware of that, but I had always picked up the wrong issues of Sandman, which would be illustrated by one of the illustrators who I didn't care for as much. So I never fell all the way in there, but recently
Sandman is a very trippy dream. So.
yeah. It's a lot. But recently, like I felt like a dream that I never knew I had came true when, and I didn't watch the Netflix Sandman series except for when I found out that Stephen Fry played Chesterton in that, and I was like, what inspired casting? What perfection in casting is that? So yeah, that's me, and that's more or less it.
That's great. Did you ever get into Chesterton's illustrations like yourself? Because I do have your copy of the illustrated Ball and the Cross. I bought it for my son, and it's so fun. Yeah. He spent a couple days. He doesn't really read yet, but he just sat on his bed and looked at the pictures, and it was great.
Yeah, that was a joy.
Yeah, but the illustrations in that almost look like GK's own. So I just wondered, like, if you had seen his, if you're influenced by his, like if there was any connection.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I really, his 3 Acres and a Cow illustration got me early on. I think I've had a collection of his art. They did an art book of his, and then there's a picture of him drawing on the ceiling from bed, right? Which was also cool. And I think I feel like it's weird. I feel like he was as an artist and as an illustrator, he was almost ahead of his time in a way. By which I mean, his style as an artist. I mean, he was doing his pictures at the same time. Yeah, not the same. Shortly after, like Arthur Rackham was doing these beautifully realized, detailed pictures. The Brandywine School of Illustration was big, and here's Chesterton with his kind of loopy, scratchy lines.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's more. I feel like his illustrations are more akin to like Shel Silverstein and Quentin Blake and Jules Pfeiffer and some of these people who are working a lot in the '60s, right? Like he almost jumps ahead to these guys a bit, or sort of sees them coming, or sees that stuff. Anyway, but yeah, there's some influence there, I'd say.
No, I love that. And yeah, I think he is a little more like comic booky in his sketches.
Just really loose, really free.
Yeah, as he does everything. But let's talk more about some of the things you're working on. I know you've done the Zeta, the Space Girl, and that I have heard is based. Well, the name at least is taken from Saint Zeta. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. So the character originated with my wife Anna, who was drawing Zeta the Space Girl comics on loose leaf, largely to sort of poke at her professor or teacher, high school teacher. She was largely torturing him with these comics, some of them were just fun and hilarious. But with her family, her dad was from Italy, and he is from the region where Saint Zeta is kind of big, and so that's how the name came to her, the character. And then I sort of in the early days started developing Zeta and building a world and sort of story around this character. So
that's great. So you have some kids books, but you've been doing some interesting circumnavigation of the globe kind of things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my most recent project, which I've got on my desk right now, which I'm working on. So this is like we said. So with Zeta, so that quote from The Everlasting Man, it stuck with me about traveling away from a place kind of as far as you can in order to come back to it and see it with fresh eyes. So, and then early on, the idea had always appealed to me. Actually, even before now that I'm working on this book, I'm realizing that the idea had stuck with me before I even started this book. So to explain, so I read the quote, lodged in my brain. When I started Zeta the Space Girl, that idea started as a journey book. This kid who was far from home, trying to get back to Earth, and I put that quote in the beginning of the first volume of Zeta the Space Girl, and thought, okay, I've used that quote. That's the end of it. But the idea, like for me, even before I had read the quote, when I was in high school, I came up with a character who I call the Story Detour, but it's this character who's walking home from school. I mean, it's very like dream realization type stuff. But I came up with this character who's walking home from school, and they go out of their way to help someone, and then somebody else needs some kind of small help, small favor, so they go a little further out of their way to help somebody else, and this keeps happening, so that they're a prisoner of their own altruism, sort of, and they get further and further and further of their home until this kid is on the other side of the world, always wanting to get back home, always betrayed by their sense of being of service.
Sounds like Parenthood.
A little bit, right? Yeah, but it's also like it's in the cultural consciousness, right? Like one of my favorite shows growing up was Quantum Leap. I don't. Do you remember Quantum Leap?
No, but I've heard of it. But I know it exists, but I've never seen it.
This guy, Dr. Sam Beckett, theorizes that one could time travel through one's own life, through the years of your own lifetime. So in that, he was born in like 49 or something like this, the character of this doctor, and he goes into this time machine, and he something snatches him up when he enters the time machine. And they say, they're like, we don't know what it was, if it's God or fate or time or something, but the universe has got you. And so Sam jumps into other people's bodies, essentially. He jumps into other people's lives. When he looks in a mirror, he sees himself. No. When we see him, we see Sam, but when Sam looks in the mirror, we see what everybody else sees, which is this person that he's inhabiting. And whatever has grabbed him is using Sam to put right what once went wrong. So he always leaps into some situation he does in the middle of some situation. He's all kinds of different stuff, like fighter pilot or the baseball player, young pregnant woman, and a lot of like social ills stuff comes up in it. But he hopes each leap will be the leap home, but it never is, because this force of the universe has a hold of him, and he has to just leap around from situation to situation. Anyway, so these stories are both in the cultural consciousness and definitely in my consciousness. And then, for the last 10 years, it sort of came to a head or whatever. And I decided I really wanted to do a book about a circumnavigation of the globe.
Yeah.
My own kitchen, this little farmhouse that we have, has two doors. One faces east, the other faces west. So that was it. I decided to walk out the eastern facing door of the house and then walk back in the western facing door, using as much as humanly possible only surface transportation. So no flying. So I pitched this to the publishers, and after having done 12 or 13 books, they were like, this is crazy, but okay. They bid on the book, and like a month and a half ago, I actually just got back from that. I left in May, got back in toward the end of July, and now I'm putting together everything that I experienced in that journey into a book. It's also a little bit based on Nellie Bly's journey around the world. So, in 1872, Jules Verne comes up with this idea. You could go around the world in 80 days. 12 years later, Nellie Bly, young 20-something journalist from New York, says, I think you could do this in real life. This is like 1889, right? Like, who does this? And the newspapers are like, you know what? Sure. You can leave in 2 days. And there were actually two women racing around the world. Another publication sent a woman named Elizabeth Bisland the opposite direction, and they were racing to see who would get to New York first.
I love that.
So one of my questions for this book, the two driving forces from this book were that pilgrimage to home, where you go, like a pilgrimage being a sacred destination that you travel to, and the journey itself is what kind of changes you along the way. So this idea that the sacred destination is home approached from the other side, it was the first thing. And the other thing was real questions like in what ways is it easier, and in what ways is it more difficult to do this journey without flying 100 years, more than 100, like 140 years after it was done by Nellie Bly. She made it back in 72 days. Can you do this? Because she had three real advantages. And one was suddenly having fast global communication to give her the timetables. That's a big one, and that was fairly new, right? That was for the first time we have telegraph cables under the ocean, right? And so they can wire ahead.
Gosh,
I'll hold this train, right? Like 100 years ago, there were wires under the ocean.
Wow.
And the other things she had were British colonialism, and ready steamships. So those two things we don't have anymore. We don't have. She got on a steamship out of New York to England with just like 1 or 2 days notice. You could just hop on a steamship and go. She went through a lot of her journey was on steamers.
Yeah.
And that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Even less of a thing now. COVID took down a bunch of ferries. Some of the ferries have not come back, particularly when I was planning this trip, particularly like the one from Greece to Alexandria, right? So
interesting.
You can't get across the Mediterranean that way easily anymore. So, and then the third thing is colonialism. She went to a lot of British ports. She didn't really have to contend with not speaking English. And so we don't have two of those three things, but we do have like a magical phone that we can put in our pocket and use as a translator and use to get those global timetables right away as they change. So it was a real mixed bag trying to recreate that and figure out how to do it.
And how long did it take you?
I first of all, I was not able to do it without flying. I could not find any Pacific crossing.
Interesting. Okay.
There was nothing that a normal person could take, like a normal passenger could take. So I flew the Pacific. If I had found sea crossing, I would have. So I took 55 days to do it. Which means I think I would have been about 75 days if I had done the Pacific crossing by sea.
Wow.
So right in the zone, right between Nellie Bly and Elizabeth Bisland and Phileas Fogg.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. But the most incredible part of the trip, though, really did turn out to be walking the last mile along these old railroad tracks to the house, because I had left out the one door and gone only east the whole time. And by continuing going east, I ended up coming back to the house from the other direction and actually viscerally feeling the roundness of the earth.
Oh, that's cool.
Sphericalness of the world. So that that's the book in a nutshell. I pitched it as Around the World in 80 pages, but that's not. It's at least 300 at this point.
Wow! So you're gonna write about it and illustrate it, and then
it's gonna be comics. I traveled
great.
with. Let me find a good page. I traveled with. Where's it good? I traveled with a journal on me. So the pages that I drew on the road look something like this.
That's so fun.
Yeah. And here's like a page from France.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. And they're like true to style. You know, a bit of fantasy follows me along.
Of course.
Not. But anyway, yeah. The best page that I traveled with, though, which felt kind of Chestertonian in its own way, most important page, or the most useful page that I traveled with, was, I made this one just for the road. This helped me explain to non-English speakers very quickly what I was doing.
Yeah.
So traveling with the art and with that page really unlocked a lot of things. People grasped the story very quickly and I was very aware that I was traveling very much by the grace of human kindness, the kindness of strangers. Was just an enormous part of the trip. It would not have happened the way I did it. It would not have happened without just a network of friends of friends, and total strangers reaching out and just being like, "Let us help you."
Oh,
You
that's
poor
great.
lost person who is like thousands of miles from home.
Yeah. Doing
So
what crazy thing?
yeah.
Oh man, that is
So anyway,
so cool.
yeah.
I think people are going to love that. Do you know when that's going to come out?
We're aiming for 2026.
Okay.
If I make my deadlines, I think it's still on for that. So we'll see. Publishing is a big, slow machine these days.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, that's so exciting though. It reminds me a little, I don't know if you've ever read Man Alive.
Yeah.
So there is that part too where
Yeah.
Innocent Smith is talking about doing the same thing.
Yeah. He goes around the world and abducts women, but
who
they
are
all tend
actually
to
his
be
wife.
they all turn out to be the same woman who has also snuck away to take like odd positions, and it's like this roving game of hide and seek that they play.
I love it.
Pretty fun.
Yeah. So your family didn't go with you. It's just you.
Anna and my youngest daughter went on the first leg of the journey. So I walked out the door and I walked to the Shenandoah River with my 13-year-old daughter, and then we went down the river together in a canoe. So
cool.
that was a really fun. She got to be at the very beginning of the trip, and then my wife and my youngest, who was 2, just a few months over 2 at the time, they came with me on. So my original dream was to take a cargo ship across the Atlantic, but that also is not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So we took the Queen Mary across, which is the last the last like ocean liner working. It's the last just passenger liner that's not really a cruise. It's a point to point liner. So we took that together, and I was at the beginning, I was like grumpy because it was too like easy, too nice. But I should have told myself, like, don't worry, Ben, the hard part, the grungy part, it's coming. But it was fun, and it was a good experience. And it was a lot like Titanic cosplay a little bit. It was really nice because they have a dress code. You wear like a dinner dress to evening meals and stuff like that. So it was really fun. And Petra had dance parties. There was like childcare room and stuff like that. So
that is fun.
It was cool. So they came with me up to England, and then I branched out on my own. So.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. That's quite an undertaking. I think that's amazing. And I've never heard of anyone doing that recently. So that's going to be really neat. Yeah.
There's a lot to explore.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we are coming close up to time, but is there anything else that you want to touch on? Any other projects you're working on? Anything you want to share before we sign off here?
Wow. Gosh, I could go on all day about projects. Most recent books before this were, I feel like of all my books, the one that Chesterton himself would have enjoyed the most was Things in the Basement. So this is my spookier book. It's a really early reader, but as this kid goes down into the basement and finds hidden worlds under the basement, it gets larger and larger the deeper he goes, in search of his baby sister's missing sock. But as he goes down lower in the basement, we, the viewer, are also sort of traveling visually back through art history until we get to the very bottom and find the drawings on the cave walls.
And I do think
that it comes right back to Everlasting Man, where those drawings of the cave walls are our earliest evidence of humanity, and it is art. And so I think he would have liked that. And then after the 80 Days project, I'm working on a project that involves the Golem of Prague, and kind of touches on one of my favorite movies, which was The Golem and how he came to be in this world. It's a 1920s silent. 1920 was the year of the movie, a silent film about this creature, the Golem, and how it was created. And
I've seen bits of that in a class, believe it or not.
Good. It's so weird. The whole movie is so good. I watched it with my eldest daughter, and she was like, I love this. I didn't know there was such a thing as this kind of movie. And it is one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
I'll have to watch the whole thing.
There are 2 lost films in that series. It was actually a trilogy of movies. And one of the lost movies is called The Golem and the Dancing Girl. And so, anyway, the next book I'm working on is The Golem and the Dancing Girl. I'm just going to make whatever I think my version of it was. But just to finish the thought, in looking at this and thinking about Chesterton, I realized that he was my age when the Gollum movie that I love so much came out. So it was just one of these things where, like, it's just time is loopy and strange, and I keep thinking like those times where you take historical figures or people you love in history and compare their lives and timelines with your own. You get these weird perspectives on time. One more thing I would tell you real quick.
Sure.
On the Queen Mary, it was interesting. There were also about 8 people on that ship, between 8 and 10 people on that ship who were between 99 and 104 years old.
Oh, wow.
They were World War II veterans going back to celebrate the 80-year anniversary of D-Day.
Oh my gosh.
It's incredible, right?
Wow.
And and what I later then figured, like talking to them and hearing presentations of their stories, all amazing. But then I realized, like, these people are living history. 80 for me, D-Day was 80 years ago. When they were young, going into Normandy, Nellie Bly's journey around the world was only 55 years ago for them. And it's just like, it just puts time into this weird perspective. Like Nellie Bly, you think like, oh, that's a Victorian era adventure. But for these guys, it was just like, if their parents were older, they would have remembered it, or, their grandparents would have been like, oh yeah, we remember reading about that in the paper.
Yeah.
So
and thinking about the time span of one person. I mean, Chesterton, started his life in the late Victorian era, and he lost a brother in World War One. Like, just the huge span of life of so much
history in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It is.
So anyway.
Well, thank you so much for chatting. This was really great. We'll certainly link to your page and any work that you want us to. And everybody go check them out. It's some really cool stuff. Like I said, my son absolutely loves the illustrations from your book, and I can't wait to. When he's a little bit older, I'll read it to him. He's not quite there yet.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. But thank you again. It's really been fun.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening and watching. And please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, teach that algorithm that we need to get this video in front of more and more people. Because as we know, Chesterton is always better with friends. Thank you and God bless.